Hey everyone, it's Josh May, RacingSource.com. Chris Myers is here. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, how did you start in broadcasting? Obviously, you broadcast the Super Bowl, the Daytona 500, like you broadcast the biggest events. So how did you start broadcasting?
Well, it was funny. I was a teenager growing up in South Florida, and I was, supposed to be doing homework, which I was like every good kid has to do. Big family, but I would be back in my room and I would listen on the radio to a sports talk show in Miami, and it was WKAT, Cat with a K, and you could call in. They only wanted you to call in once a night. It was a 2-hour show, and I would call in, and I liked talking sports so much. But I had a deep voice even as a kid, so I would call in as Chris from Miami and then talk about whatever, the Rams, the Dodgers, NASCO, and then I would hang up and I would disguise my voice and I would call back, and they didn't have caller ID back then, Josh, so they didn't know it was me, and I would be Duke from North Miami, and I would go on the air on the radio show and agree with my earlier call, so that way I'd get more airtime to talk as a broadcaster. And this before I even knew I wanted to be a broadcaster. I just liked sports so much, and so I had that going for a while. And they had fan night where they invited some of their regular callers from the sports talk show down to the studio, and I couldn't even drive yet. My father had to drive me down there, and I told him, I said, well, you make sure you let him know you're the same guy, the same kid, really, just doing a voice impression. And they got a kick out of that and said, oh, well, if you want to work weekends here, you can. And then eventually, that's how in high school, I started working weekends in radio and helped pay my way through college. And then went from radio to TV and ESPN, and then of course now Fox. So that's kind of where it all began. I really didn't know it would take that route. But there's a lot of different ways to get into to the business, but that's my story.
All right. So then you when you went to ESPN, what were you doing for them, and how long were you there?
I was there almost 10 years, and I won an Emmy for I was first their West Coast reporter. I won an Emmy for a story on a baseball pitcher, Tim Burke, who was an all-star and adopted a child in a foreign land, and it was a terrific, touching story. Then I anchored SportsCenter and Baseball Tonight, and then came out to Los Angeles for ESPN to host Up Close, which was once established by Roy Firestone, a one-on-one interview show, which I really enjoyed. And made that. We did live shows. We had the first ever interview live with O.J. Simpson after both the court trial with the criminal charges and the legal charges, among other interviews with famous, Jeff Gordon, of course, Dale Jarrett through their heyday, and then I joined Fox Sports as they started to begin, and when Fox took over the NASCAR in 2001, I was put in as the main host of the pre-race show, pre-race post-race with Darrell Waltrip and the gang, and so that's kind of been the background. I was in local television before that, at Miami and in New Orleans, doing the local affiliate broadcast for sports.
And then you mentioned, I was reading your website, and I saw that you interviewed Billy Crystal and Tom Hanks and people like that. How did you get those people? Was that through Fox Sports or ESPN or?
Yeah, I was at covering the Red Sox baseball in the postseason, and Tom Hanks, who grew up an Oakland A's fan, and was promoting the movie. You've probably seen this movie at the time, Polar Express. Remember that around Christmas, where he does?
Yeah.
All the voices or most of the voices of the show. Is a terrific movie. At the time, he was there to talk about that, but he happened to be watching the game in the stands with some people and with the Red Sox, and so we had a moment at the end of the game to interview him. He was a very nice gentleman. And Billy Crystal, when I was doing the Up Close show, he had done a movie where I think he was an NBA referee, and also had done something with George Mirzon, an NBA player. And we had Billy on for a half hour, and of course Billy's been at Yankee games, and I've seen him around baseball, and he's such a great sports fan, like Bill Murray. I mean, Bill Murray with the Cubs and with golf, and I've also interviewed Bill Murray and actually become good friends with him because of their love for sports. That's where our paths crossed, and it was great talking to those guys. They're real genuine people.
All right, so just for a second, I want to talk about the 2001 Daytona 500. It was the first race for NASCAR and Fox, and as a broadcaster, how did you deal with that fact, like at the end of that race, when with Dale Earnhardt and all that. How did you handle that?
Yeah, well, for me, obviously, being our first NASCAR broadcast, and this is the face of the sport in Dale Earnhardt, there's immediate concern, but we really didn't know for sure. And I'd covered some other breaking news events. I covered the World Series when there was the earthquake in the Bay Area. I covered the Olympics in Atlanta when a bomb went off. So news stories breaking in where sports are played is not new to me, but we just could not confirm. We thought we knew, but you couldn't confirm. You had the dramatic Darrell Waltrip calling the race with his brother Michael winning his first ever Daytona 500, but this wreck, and we'd seen far worse wrecks before, but there was something more difficult about this, and you can't go on and report something definitive that we've lost Dale Earnhardt unless you absolutely know that through whether it's NASCAR or the medical examiner or the hospital. So that was a very difficult thing for us to cover because we had wrapped up the race and didn't have the information at that time to give to the audience to at least announce it. Well, we thought we had it, but until you confirm it, you can't go tell the world, so to speak. So the timing of that obviously was difficult, but we wanted to make sure we were sensitive to what had happened.
All right. So I'm gonna jump ahead now to this year. You covered the Super Bowl, and you were the sideline reporter, right?
Yes.
All right. So going into the NASCAR season this year, you're basically you're doing a little bit more. Like Jeff Hammond's back doing some more with you. You have race day and victory lane now to do as well. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, what happened was with the new 24-hour sports channel, the Fox network has carried the races, but now we have, it started last August, Fox Sports 1, which used to be the Speed Channel. So on Fox Sports 1, we have a lot of live events with baseball and soccer and UFC, and this is a good channel to go to. We want to put a lot of racing on that. Obviously, we'll have some races, actual cup races. We'll have truck races, which we've had nationwide. We'll have next year practice and disqualifying, and so it created a lot more room to do shows and change things a little since there is no more Speed Network that kind of morphed into this. So aside from my normal role of doing the pre-race show and post-race show for NASCAR on Fox and various interviews in Daytona and that type of thing, now I host Race Day, which is on Fox Sports 1, and that's an hour show that comes on before the pre-race show comes on Fox, and then we host, aside from the post-race show on Fox, now we do another half hour Victory Lane, which used to be a separate show, and that also can be part of Fox Sports Live when we have the time to do that. So Jeff Hammond's become more of a reporter since Dick Bergman had retired a year earlier. Larry Reynolds works with Michael Waltrip on the Race Day show, and then Darrell Waltrip and Michael Waltrip work on the Fox pre-race show, and then the post-race show on Fox Sports 1 and or Victory Lane. That's where Jeff Hammond comes back and joins Michael Waltrip and myself. So it's a lot of shows, a lot of programming, but we have a lot of good people to kind of cover it all.
Yeah, so the Hollywood Hotel, that's where you do the work, right?
Yeah, that's basically kind of a traveling mobile studio that really gained its name from Chef Hollywood Hammond, and I live near Hollywood, Florida, and now I live near Hollywood, California, and Darrell Waltrip kind of named it that. First, he called it the Heartbreak Hotel, and it caught on with race fans all the way back in 2001, and it's been a very popular thing with race fans when we go from track to track. So we've tried to remodel it a little bit, and we've done some shows outside on location, right outside the Hollywood Hotel at Talladega and Daytona, so we're out with the fans or out on pit road if we're not in the way of things, but that's kind of my main office, yes.
All right, so this is the last week for NASCAR on Fox for the year.
Yeah, our last race for this year. Now, Josh, it's good that next year we not only will have nationwide races in the first half, but we're going to add at least 3 more cup races to our schedule like we had previously in the early years. So Sonoma will be in the mix, and a few others will take us more into June. But for right now, June, yeah, the Nova race Sunday in Delaware is the final Fox broadcast that will carry. And it's always tough leaving because we feel like we're handing it off just when things get going. But at least we have the Daytona 500, the portion of the season when we get to establish who the drivers are to watch before they hit the long stretch of the summer and then the chase.
Alright, so since this year, like I said, different approach with Fox Sports 1, are you going to continue hosting race day and stuff like that?
The plan right now is race day will continue from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I won't be doing it. It'll probably be John Roberts and or Adam Alexander at some point, and then I move on to do baseball and then NFL football and calling games through the rest of the summer and the fall, and then obviously I'll be back in February at the Sprint Unlimited and the Daytona 500. But yes, Fox Sports 1 will still have a race day show. It just won't be on location at the races.
Alright, so my last question for you, before I let you go back to what you're doing, out of the NFL draft this year, I watched a lot of that. What team do you think will benefit the most from that draft?
Wow, that's a good question. I think teams that did a lot with where their position was. I think teams like even the Patriots, the Raiders, I thought had a good draft. I thought Minnesota did some good things with their selections. It's a quarterback-driven league, the NFL. So if you can find your quarterback, then I think that you're gonna do well. Is Blake Bortles in Jacksonville? Is he the best quarterback in the draft? Is it Bridgewater in Minnesota? Is it Manziel in Cleveland? Those are big questions. I do think that as good as Jadeveon Clowney is in Houston taking him the top pick, I just think they're not going to win enough games without better quarterback play unless they pick a trade or find someone somewhere. That's a problem. So I would say just those few teams that I mentioned probably benefited. Teams like Minnesota, like Oakland, and even the Patriots again from where they picked in the draft. And I think Jacksonville probably had a very good draft too. Once the talent plays out, but it could be fun to watch.
All right, thanks, Chris. I got one more question for you. Who do you think's going to win Dover this week?
Well, I've been Jimmy Johnson. To me, there was never any slump. He's just heating up, and he should be everybody's first choice. But I think that you might get a guy who hasn't won yet this year. Believe it or not, this might be a Greg Biffle, Casey Kane, kind of a little bit throw monkey wrench into things, throw the race off a little bit. But certainly, if I had to place a bet on somebody, it would be Jimmy Johnson.
All right, thanks, Chris, for taking the time to join us.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks, Chris. That's Chris Myers.